We hear a lot about the Manhattanization or so-called Manhattanization of skylines around the world. What do you make of that? Is that a concern? And if so, what should be done about it? Or is this really just some sort of overblown conversation?
No, it's not overblown. It's a kind of banal idea to take a city that is fantastic and pretend that you can, with a kind of a snap of your finger, take some dimensions and put it somewhere else and expect the same result. You'll never get it because cities, first of all, are historical. They develop in time. They've developed through cultural traditions. You can't just lift something. Even if you love it, it'll never work. And I've seen those Manhattanization ideas, build things like Manhattan in X, Y, Z, but because they don't connect with the local traditions, sometimes in an outrageous way, building Manhattan in the middle of a desert doesn't kind of make sense. So you have to have a kind of love for history, love for the spiritual idea that architecture is not just a commodity. It's not like a refrigerator or a washing machine or a car or or a tablet where you can just take it somewhere and a city is more than meets the eye. And if you want to have Manhattan, I'm all for it because it's my favorite city. You'd have to study what makes Manhattan so great. I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
What makes Manhattan great is that it was open to strangers. I was an immigrant to New York from a communist country. Poland. And, to me, the Statue of Liberty is not some rhetorical symbol of American power. It's the truth of America. It's the flame that says, this is a place, you've been oppressed over there. Here, you can be free. You can be free here. Come over here. Give us all the rejects of the world. They'll find a place here and they'll be creative. And I think that's what makes, if that was taken from Manhattan, if you took that idea, give me your poor, you're tired, your masses yearning to be free, bring them here, then it wouldn't be just a show of buildings. It would be the character of Manhattan.
I think those ideas, liberty, inclusion, openness, I think most people would get behind that. But when it comes to developers and architects, planners, how can they embody those ideas in their work?
First of all, there are many beautiful places in countries that don't allow people free expression, that are very authoritarian, that do not allow people to be free. So that's the precondition, a democracy. Now, different countries have different histories, so you can't say just one. But letting people think, letting people exercise their civic roles is the key. And involving them in a participatory process of building something. I believe in that very, very strongly.
So should architects withhold their services from countries where they don't have those conditions?
Let everybody do whatever they want. You're responsible. You have to do what you believe in. And sure, each project has to be analyzed on its own terms. Land ownership, what is it going to be? Who is paying for it? Is it going to be a good building? Is it going to do something for people in that city? And if the answers are yes, I don't care where it is, then I would do it. And I do it, obviously, all around the world.
What are some of the elements that make a building accessible, approachable on the human scale, and especially those elements that are not widely incorporated?
I think, we have the word sustainability. We have global warming. We have the idea that we have to incorporate nature into buildings. Resiliency. These are all obvious facts. You're going to have to be an idiot not to, understand that these are not some metaphysical ideas. But a building needs much more than that. It needs love. Of course it needs money. Without money you wouldn't be able to build it. But it needs a commitment, a passion to express something, to communicate something. Because, as I always say, every building communicates, and every neighborhood communicates, and every city communicates. It's just, what do they communicate? They should communicate the things that we all can be there together. Diversity, imagination, possibilities for kids, equality of gender, income equality. I mean, that's a good city, a city that can, now, no city is perfect, but a city that strives to do that will be a successful city.
How do you communicate some of those ideas in your own work?
Well, first of all, I think of the building as something that should be memorable. that's sustainability to me, because buildings that we remember are taken care of. Buildings that are forgotten or forgettable just disappear in time. So how do you make a building memorable? You have to incorporate into it something that is beyond the aesthetic of the building, something beyond the style of the building. There's got to be this is a tricky word, a spirit of the building. What is the spirit? Now, if you could buy the spirit, we would not have this conversation, but the spirit is ineffable. It's something that depends on human beings, on a kind of solidarity across borders, across beliefs, across prejudices. It's something that is open to strangers. And I always think that, a building is not built for those who we know. It should be built for those who we don't know.
Yeah, to that point, one of the themes of this conference is global exchanges and the global flow of capital. That I've been told by many people in that same chair is, universally a good thing. It's going to make more projects happen. It's enabling work. But also, I wonder if that idea of a building having a spirit is maybe threatened or at odds with money flowing in from all corners of the world and having to, respond to so many different people who have so many different desires.
Look, Max Weber, famous German philosopher, wrote a book called The Protestant Spirit and the Ethic of Capitalism. He said that, capitalism and Protestantism went together because saving was to save, not just yourself, but save everything around you, save money, save the city, save investments. But, we don't live in a Protestant world only. We've got a multicultural world. And we have to, of course, we need capital, flow of capital to be able to do anything in the world. But it's with a sense of social responsibility that we need to have, because we are running out of resources. Nature is being exploited. We see fundamentalism and threats to open societies all over the world. We see the problems, the privatization of space, islands of sort of civility among deserts of violence. So we have to think more of the global situation, and how can architecture help? It can by addressing those issues culturally, not just by making gymnastics with a nice facade, but creating valuable communities where people feel that they're empowered to act in those communities, and that has to do a lot to do with the kind of space you make, the kind of what the building looks like.
I want to ask you about one more thing, and you mentioned empowering buildings to act. Many of the world's great cities are on coastal floodplains or threatened by storm surges, which are going to get worse with climate change. What are some things that architects, planners, buildings and cities can do to protect against sea level rise, storm surge, and associated threats?
Well, we have to think not just of the technical solutions, immediate technical solutions. When we have Sandy, I live in Manhattan, right? It's not just the immediate, it's the long range. What do we expect the city to be 50 years from now, 100 years from now, given the change in climate, given the threats that are around us? How are we going to cope with it? So it's not just a local answer. It has to be a global answer. And I think, talking about the carbon footprint, seeing the political issues that drive development or lack of it. Because I say political, no, I'm not a politician, but politeia in Greek means the city, the citizens. It's a city for citizens. And therefore, I think to solve issues that you're now raising, it requires much more, and requires also governments to step in. It's not just about individual architects saying, please, don't just give me this floodplain and tell me to take the equipment and put it higher up because you expect a flood. But what are we going to do as government? Where is our investment going to be? Is it going to be in more armaments? Is it going to be in more of the feeding of the violence, which is plentiful, and I am all for defense? But is it going to be the infrastructure, which we badly need to develop, even in very rich countries?